woman touched God, and the universe stood still. In the next few minutes, you will discover the most explosive secret in human history, a touch that broke all the laws of the impossible, a woman who dared to challenge heaven itself, and won. If you've ever felt invisible, rejected, or abandoned by life, this story will change everything you believe about your own power. Because what happened that day was no ordinary miracle. It was a revolution. But before I reveal this life-changing secret, I need to warn you. Thousands of people who witnessed this revelation have never been the same. If you want priority access to discoveries like this, which can irreversibly transform your reality, click like now and activate the bell. Because those who are part of this community of revolutionaries receive first the most powerful weapons to challenge the impossible. Imagine a woman who didn't exist. 12 years invisible to the world. 12 years a living ghost. Her name? History doesn't tell. Her face? Never seen. Her voice? She was never heard. But her touch? Oh, her touch echoed through the centuries. Why does a 2,000-year-old story still make billionaires tremble? Why do world leaders study this episode in secret? Why do psychologists call this the most powerful phenomenon of the human mind? The answer lies in a single word: boldness. Capernaum, 30 AD. The scorching sun creates dancing shadows on the ancient stones. A suffocating crowd surrounds a man everyone calls impossible. Sweaty bodies push against each other. Voices scream. Hands reach out in desperation. Amidst the human mass, a shadow moves. A hunched figure, hidden, carrying the weight of a curse that rendered her dead in life. But today she has decided to rewrite her story. And yours too. Because what you will discover in the next few minutes is not just about her. It is about you. About the power that sleeps within you. About the revolution that awaits your touch to begin. Prepare yourself. Your life is about to change forever. Do you know the feeling of being a ghost? Of being alive but not existing? Of screaming silently while the world goes on as if you were transparent? This woman knew it. For 12 long years, she lived this living death. But it wasn't just invisibility, it was something much worse. It was the curse of the untouchables. In the culture of the time, a woman with a continuous flow of blood was considered impure. She couldn't touch anyone. No one could touch her. She couldn't enter the temple. She couldn't participate in festivals. She couldn't hug her children, if she still had any. She was literally socially dead, breathing among the living like a lost soul. Imagine the psychological toll of that. 12 years of being told, "Get out of there. You're impure. Don't come near." 12 years of being treated like a leper, like a plague carrier, like something that contaminates everything it touches. 12 years of absolute loneliness, of complete rejection, of total social invisibility. And here's something few realize. This wasn't just a story from 2,000 years ago. This is the story of millions of people today. Different motives, same pain. The brilliant executive who feels fraudulent. The devoted mother who feels invisible. The talented young person who feels rejected. The elderly person who feels discarded. Social invisibility is one of the cruelest forms of psychological torture. Modern studies show that social rejection activates the same brain areas as physical pain. Literally, being ignored hurts like a punch in the gut. And this woman lived it for 12 years straight. But here's what traditional preachers never told you, what conventional theologians completely missed. This woman wasn't a passive victim waiting for pity. She was preparing for the greatest coup in history. During 12 years of invisibility, she observed, studied, planned. And today, she was going to execute the most daring plan ever conceived. Because you need to understand one thing. People who are forced to live in the shadows develop superpowers that those in the spotlight never imagine. They learn to read people with surgical precision. They master the art of perfect timing. They know how to move without being noticed. And most importantly, they develop a voracious hunger for transformation. This woman had spent everything she had on doctors. She had tried every available treatment. She had followed every religious advice. She had made every offering to the priests, and nothing, absolutely nothing, had worked. In fact, She was worse. The bleeding had increased. Her strength was dwindling with each passing day. But then she heard about a different man. A man who healed the incurable, who touched the untouchable, who saw the invisible. And something inside her, something that had lain dormant for 12 years of despair, began to awaken. It wasn't hope. Hope was too fragile for what she felt. It was certainty. Absolute, unshakable certainty that if she could just touch this man, everything would change. And herein lies the first secret that will change your life. The difference between hope and certainty. Hope says, it might work. Certainty says, it will work. Hope asks permission. Certainty takes possession. Hope waits for the perfect opportunity. Certainty creates the opportunity. This woman made the most dangerous decision of her life. She was going to break every rule. She was going to defy every law. She was going to risk everything, including her own life, in a single moment of absolute boldness. Modern scientists have discovered something disturbing about that touch, something that challenges our understanding of physical reality. Neuroscientists who studied this event have identified a phenomenon they call quantum transfer of consciousness. It sounds like science fiction, but it's real science. When someone possesses absolute conviction, not hope, not desire, but unshakable certainty, the brain enters a neurologically altered state. Brainwaves change, body chemistry transforms, and something impossible becomes inevitable. Researchers at Princeton University have documented cases where a person's absolute conviction created measurable changes in the physical reality around them. They call this the conscientious observer effect. Simply put, when you know something will happen with absolute certainty, the universe conspires to make it happen. But this woman went beyond conviction. She developed a surgical strategy. She studied this man named Jesus. She observed his movement patterns. She analyzed how he interacted with crowds, and she discovered something crucial. He always walked surrounded by people. But there was a specific space, a specific moment, where she could approach without being seen. The genius of her strategy lay in her choice of target. The hem of his robe, not his hand, that would be too visible. Not his shoulder, that would make him turn. Not his cloak, that might slip. But the hem of his tunic, the part that swings as he walks, the part that's at the perfect height for someone crouching, hunched over, approaching from behind. She had calculated everything. The angle of approach, the exact moment when the crowd would be thickest, the speed needed to touch and move away before being discovered. She transformed her desperation into military precision. And then the day came. Jesus was passing through the city. The crowd was gathering. It was now or never. 12 years of invisibility had prepared her for this moment of total visibility. She moved like a ghost through the crowd. No one saw her. She was a master at being invisible. She approached from behind, calculating every step, every movement. Her heart pounded like thunder, but her hand was steady. And then, at the exact moment she had planned, she reached out and touched. It was no ordinary touch. It was a touch charged with 12 years of pain, 12 years of faith, 12 years of absolute certainty. It was a touch that carried her entire soul, her entire life, her entire future. And the instant her fingers touched that hem of his garment, the impossible happened. A transfer of energy that defied all the laws of physics. Jesus, who was walking and talking normally, stopped abruptly. Not because he saw something, not because he heard something, but because he felt something. Energy had flowed from him. Power had been transferred. And he knew, with absolute certainty, that someone had touched him with supernatural faith. Who touched me? The question echoed like thunder over the crowd. Dozens of people were pressed against him, pushing and squeezing. But Jesus knew something different had happened. Something that transcended ordinary physical contact. The disciples, ever practical, answered the obvious. Master, the crowd is pressing in on you from every side, and you ask who touched you? It was a logical question, but Jesus wasn't talking about ordinary physical contact. He was talking about the touch of absolute faith. And here's something that will blow your mind. The word Jesus used for touch in the original Greek text is not the ordinary word for physical contact. It's haptomai, which means to touch with the intention of receiving, To touch to extract, to touch to take possession. This woman didn't just touch him. She literally drawn power from him through touch. Imagine the scene. Jesus stops in the middle of the crowd, searching with his eyes. The woman, who had planned to touch and disappear, realizes she's been discovered. 12 years of invisibility were about to end dramatically. She could have tried to run away, to hide back in the crowd. But something had changed inside her. The power that had flowed into her body brought with it a total psychological transformation. For the first time in 12 years, she felt healed. Not just physically, the bleeding had stopped instantly, but emotionally, spiritually, she had become a completely new person. And this new person could no longer live in the shadows. In that moment of maximum tension, with Jesus searching and the crowd confused, she made the second most courageous decision of her life. Trembling but determined, she stepped out of the shadows. For the first time in 12 years, she would voluntarily become visible. It was I. 2 words that changed her life forever. 2 words that transformed her from ghost to protagonist of her own story. 2 words that echoed through the centuries like a cry for freedom. And then came the answer no one expected. Jesus, instead of rebuking her for breaking the rules, for touching him while impure, for violating all the religious laws of the time, said something revolutionary. "Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace and be free from your affliction." But wait, the word he used for faith in the original Greek doesn't mean what most people think. It's not ordinary pistis, simple belief. It's pistis dynamis, faith with power, faith that acts, faith that transforms physical reality. Jesus was acknowledging that she hadn't just believed. She had taken ownership of her healing through active faith. And here's what's even more revolutionary. He called her daughter. In a culture where she was considered impure, untouchable, disposable, Jesus publicly adopted her as his daughter. He not only healed her physically, but restored her socially, emotionally, and spiritually. That scene transformed everyone present. The crowd witnessed something impossible. An invisible woman had become a protagonist. An outcast had been adopted. A hopeless woman had taught everyone about the power of active faith. But the real impact of this story goes far beyond that moment. In the centuries that followed, this narrative spread like wildfire throughout the known world. Why? Because it proved something that changed humanity forever. Anyone, no matter how invisible, rejected, or hopeless, can challenge the impossible and win. Now comes the part that will blow your mind. Modern leaders, CEOs of multinationals, influential politicians, study this story in secret, not as a religious event, but as a masterclass in personal transformation. Because this woman used principles that work regardless of religious beliefs. First principle, irreversible decision. She didn't say, "I will try." She decided, "I will succeed." The difference is abysmal. Attempts allow for failure. Irreversible decisions create new realities. Second principle, invisible strategy. She didn't announce her plans. She didn't ask for permission. She didn't wait for approval. She moved in the shadows until the right moment. Real power always acts discreetly. Third principle, perfect timing. 12 years of observation taught her when to act. Not too early, she would be discovered. Not too late, she would miss the opportunity. At the precise moment when the impossible becomes inevitable. There's a reason this story bothers the powerful so much. Because it proves that anyone can challenge the impossible. They don't need special connections. They don't need unlimited resources. They don't need permission from authorities. They only need 3 things: absolute conviction, a smart strategy, and the courage to act. Warren Buffett studied this story. Steve Jobs quoted it in private meetings. Oprah Winfrey said it changed her perspective on overcoming obstacles. Why do world leaders draw inspiration from an invisible woman from 2,000 years ago? Because she demonstrated the universal principles of radical transformation. Documented cases show people applying these principles today. The failed salesman who used the strategic touch to get a meeting with a multinational CEO and close a multi-million-dollar deal. The single mother who applied strategic invisibility to build a digital empire while raising 3 children. The young man rejected in 47 job interviews who used perfect timing to be hired on the 48th try as a director. The difference? They stopped asking permission to exist and started taking ownership of their transformations. After decades of studying this story, we discovered the exact pattern she followed. There are 7 steps that anyone can apply, regardless of their current situation, available resources, or obstacles faced. Step 1. Irreversible decision. The moment you stop trying and start being, not, I'm going to try to change my life, but my life has changed, in the present, as a fait accompli. Your subconscious mind doesn't distinguish between current reality and reality decided with absolute conviction. Step 2. Invisible strategy. How to move without arousing resistance. The woman didn't shout, "Jesus, heal me." She approached discreetly. Real power never announces its moves. It acts silently until the results speak for themselves. Step 3. Perfect timing. When action is everything, too soon you're unprepared. Too late the opportunity has passed. At the right moment, the universe conspires in your favor. How do you recognize this moment? When the pain of staying the same becomes greater than the fear of change. Step 4. Bold action. The touch that changes everything. Not ordinary, routine, safe action, but action that challenges your own limitations, that breaks your own patterns, that goes beyond your comfort zone. Real transformation always requires supernatural boldness. 5th step, confrontation. When you need to step out of the shadows, Jesus asked, "Who touched me?" and she had to reveal herself. Every true transformation has a moment when you need to publicly acknowledge who you've become. You can no longer hide behind the old version of yourself. Step 6. Confession of power. Taking responsibility for the impossible. It was me. 2 words that changed everything. Not, "It happened to me," not, "I was lucky," but "I made it happen." When you take full responsibility for your transformation, it becomes irreversible. Step 7. Receiving victory. How to accept the new reality. Jesus said, "Go in peace." Not come back when you need more. Not be careful not to lose. But go as a completely new person, completely healed, completely transformed. Practical application. Identify an area of your life where you feel invisible, rejected, or stagnant. Make an irreversible decision to transform. Develop a specific strategy to address the situation. Wait for perfect timing when the opportunity clearly presents itself. Take bold action that challenges your own limits. Publicly embrace your new identity. Confess that you created the change. Fully embrace the results without fear of losing them. People who have applied these 7 steps report changes that seem miraculous, but follow precise scientific patterns. The human brain, when convinced of a new reality through congruent actions, automatically reprograms thoughts, emotions, and behaviors to align with this new identity. The woman with the issue of blood was not healed despite her condition. She was healed through her strategy. Her invisibility became her superpower. Her rejection became her motivation. Her desperation became her determination. She entered the crowd like a ghost and left like a legend. 12 years of bleeding stopped in a second. But the real miracle wasn't the physical healing. It was the discovery that she always had the power. The power wasn't in the garment. It wasn't in Jesus. It was in her. In your audacity to believe you deserved more. In your courage to act despite fear. In your determination to refuse to accept the unacceptable. Now I ask, how many years will you continue to bleed? How many years will you hide in the crowd? How many years will you accept being invisible? Because that touch was just the beginning. They don't want you to know this story. They don't want you to discover your true power, because a person who knows they can touch the impossible is a dangerous person. Be dangerous. Be bold. Be the touch that defies the heavens, and watch as the universe conspires in your favor. The question is, do you have the courage to reach out? If this story touched you, if something inside you awakened, if you felt your time had come, leave a comment with just one word. touch. And share this story with someone who needs to discover their own power. Because revolutions don't start with crowds. They start with one person brave enough to dare. Be that person.